Senator Warren.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So, Mr. Chairman, I'd like to be able to talk for a minute about student loan servicing. There's more than $1 trillion outstanding in student loan debt, but the United States government does not actually go out and collect on these loans. This is handled by contracts with the United States government. We have private companies that are out there, private for-profit companies that are out doing the student loan servicing. Now, there are a lot of rules and a lot of laws around student loan servicing, things that they're required to do, things they're not permitted to do, that we have in some measured way tried to make sure that borrowers will at least be treated with some basic fairness. Now, I want to start this by thinking about what happens when you break your contract. Students or former students who can't pay on their loans pay a terrific price. You've documented. They pay high fees, their credit is ruined, their paychecks are garnished, their Social Security checks can be garnished. In other words, one misstep on your obligation under your student loan, and you can be in real financial trouble and you can pay for it for a very long time. But what happens when the contractors that service our student loans don't meet their contractual obligations? Well, it turns out it seems that life is not nearly so harsh for them. Servicers like Sallie Mae, who's recently changed its name to Navient, have broken the rules, broken the law, failed their borrowers, and not lost a dime on their federal contracts. Now, in June, President Obama announced that the Department of Education would take steps to hold these servicers, these loan servicers, more accountable. And 2 weeks ago, the Department of Education followed through on that promise by announcing that it had renegotiated the contracts with the student loan servicers. Now, that's good news, but evidently the Department of Education decided that this should be done by paying student loan servicers a higher price for loans that are in active repayment and less for loans that are delinquent. So they've kind of changed the payment schedule. The problem is that these changes may not have the intended effect because the new arrangement sets such a high price for loans that are current. Servicers could make more money under the renegotiated contracts than they did under the old contracts without changing their behavior at all. For example, analysts at Compass Point ran the numbers and concluded that under the renegotiated contract, Navient, the Sallie Mae spinoff, would make an estimated $20 million extra every year going forward, even if it doesn't make a single change to treat any of its borrowers better or to comply with the law. So I don't get this. When Navient breaks the law, they get a new contract from the Department of Education that lets them make more money if they keep right on with business as usual. So what the heck is going on here, Mr. Leith?
Well, first of all, the contracts were renegotiated with the intent of incentivizing all of our servicers to do everything they can to make a borrower and keep a borrower current, not only active in repayment, but current. We modeled out the changes, and I'd have to look at the $20 million number.
Well, I'm sorry. So you modeled this out, and how much more did you figure out that they were going to make?
I don't have that with me. But I guess my point is
can you give me a ballpark here? Did you figure out that it was going to be more than $20 million?
I'm sorry. We looked at it in the aggregate of our portfolio, not by individual servicer. So,
Navient has what portion of your portfolio?
They're our third largest servicer.
So here's one of your biggest servicers. Someone else has been able to run the numbers based on what you've published and shown that this servicer doesn't have to change a single thing and can make $20 million more a year by continuing to treat student borrowers badly? And you don't have any numbers on this?
Like I said, we have numbers on the aggregate portfolio.
Well, so what do your numbers show on the aggregate of the portfolio?
I will provide that. I don't have it on the top of my head.
Okay, so let me ask you this. Surely you know this because surely you did this analysis before you renegotiated these contracts. Did it show that in general they were going to make more money for doing the same thing, or they were going to make a whole lot less money if they kept doing the same thing?
No, it shows in general that they will make a little bit more across the portfolio, but the point is we want them to do a lot more. So
So let me get this straight. You break the law, you don't follow the rules, you treat the borrowers badly, and you all just renegotiated the contract to make sure that across the portfolio they're going to make a little more money if nothing changes?
we have 11 servicers. So,
but you told me this is across the portfolio.
Right.
Collectively, they're going to make a little more money for continuing, I presume, to break the law, to not follow the rules, and to treat borrowers badly. The idea of the renegotiation was to try to help the borrowers, not to make it worse or to make the servicers richer.
The intent of the renegotiation is exactly to help the borrowers. So we will measure the impact of this change over the next 6 to 9 months. And if we don't see significant improvement in the percentage of the portfolio that are in current repayment status, moving people from delinquency to in repayment, then we will reset prices again. But you
will reset prices again to do what? To pay them even more money for not making any changes? Mr. Leith, I do not understand a basic renegotiation that says you can continue breaking the law, but we're going to pay you more money for doing it.
With regard to the Navient, I mean, I think, and the breaking the law, issue, this came up when Secretary Duncan, said that we would complete a review within 120 days. That 120 days will be up in a couple of weeks, and we're on schedule to complete that review in the time frame that was committed to. I can't say that I am aware that our servicers are out there breaking the law.
You're not aware that Sallie Mae has admitted to breaking the law and that you have your agency, and I'm sorry, your title is, you're the head of the student loan.
I'm the Chief Business Operations Officer.
Chief Business Operation for Federal Student Aid, right. And you're not aware that the servicers have broken the law? I'm
aware of the Navient settlement with Justice.
Which was a settlement because they did what?
It was a settlement that was a non-admission of guilt, which is why we are doing our investigation.
So your position is you're paying them more money because you're not sure they broke the law?
I'm sorry, we're paying our servicers the prices that we're paying to try to get the borrowers into the best current repayment plan possible.
Well, I actually just want to point out, based on these numbers, that the other side, I mean, this is just math, they could actually do a worse job and still make as much money as they're making today. I just think this is deeply shocking. We need some real accountability here. And I think what that accountability means is we need publicly available data so everyone knows how each of the servicers is performing so we can hold their feet to the fire. It means serious penalties for violating contracts, not bonuses. It means open competition so that different organizations, different groups can bid for these servicing contracts. And we need a Department of Education that's going to be on the side of the students, not on the side of the servicing industry. So that's it on that question, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
Senator Warren, what I intend to do is to write a letter from the committee. I invite you to be a part of the drafting of this letter and the signing of the letter. We'll offer it to other members of the committee to sign to Secretary Donovan on these very points that you have raised.
Thank you. Can I ask one more question?
Please.
While we're at it, I don't want to cut in front of you if you've got another one here. I want to ask another one, and let me see if I can just find my notes on this. I've kind of shuffled things around here. But I want to ask a question about here we go, I think I've got it here. I want to ask about an Inspector General report for the Department of Education. In 2003, the Inspector General issued a report on how well the Department of Education was doing on monitoring these private collection agencies that administer the student loans and deal with students who are in default. And in this report, the Inspector General found that the Department of Education was failing in its central job to protect borrowers, failing to track complaints, failing to perform audits, failing to review deliverables, and failing to maintain adequate files. In response, the Department of Education's Federal Student Aid Office, I think that's your office, Mr. Leith, pledged to change its practices, and that was 11 years ago. Now, in July of this year, just last month, the Inspector General examined the Department of Education's collection practices once again. The IG found many of the same deficiencies. According to the Inspector General, the department is failing to monitor borrower complaints, failing to take corrective action, and failing to review deliverables. In other words, the department was still not doing its job to ensure that the collectors were treating borrowers fairly and following the law. Mr. Leith, how can the department be making the same mistakes and failing borrowers in the same ways 11 years after the Office of the Inspector General pointed out these flaws?
I can assure you that from the last Inspector General audit, we have put a corrective action plan in place for every one of those issues.
I'm sorry, when you say the last one, do you mean the 2003 one or the one that just came out?
No, the one that just came out.
Well,
I'm sorry, I can't speak to the 2003 one, but I can speak to what we're doing now. We have just changed contractors for the debt collection system. We followed a life cycle methodology for the development and changes that are being made. We are tracking both verbal and written complaints. We are listening, doing random samples of 140 calls a quarter per PCA. And, when we find an issue, we address the issue, we put it in, we develop a corrective action, and we follow up through resolution on that corrective action.
So, Mr. Leith, I appreciate that, and I'm glad that you're doing those things. But what I don't understand is there was a report in 2003 that identified the same set of problems. So each action that you identify, why weren't you taking that action in 2004, in 2005, in 2006, in 2007, in 2008, in 2009, in 2010, in 2011, in 2012? Why haven't you already done those things so when the Inspector General comes back in 2013, the Inspector General can say there's been significant change since 2003?
It's a legitimate question. I cannot answer that, but I will certainly follow up.
And if I may interject, I think that's a perfect illustration of what is happening with the student loan debt and the people like myself of borrowers that find that they don't have options available to them within the current structure, is that people who are in charge of those loans and in charge of that piece of it are given latitudes that we are not given latitude in. And therein lays the insidious nature of how those collections and how that money is being collected on the backs of people who just wanted to improve their lifestyle.
Well, and you make the right point, Ms. Anderson. Students don't get to pick their servicers. They borrow from the federal government, and then the federal government picks who will service that loan. And part of the understanding is the federal government will not only pick the companies that will treat the students well, that will follow the law, that will be scrupulous in how they treat people who've taken out student loans, but also that the federal government will then monitor to make sure day after day, week after week, month after month, that those servicers are following the law. We depend on you, the Department of Education, to do this. And it's clear that it's not happening. And it's not happening for millions of borrowers out there. Mr. Chairman, I would be glad to join you on this letter and whatever else it is we can do. We have got to make some changes here.